Walk through any neighborhood right now and you'll notice something. The homes that actually stop you, the ones that feel genuinely designed, they're not the biggest or the most elaborate. They're the ones where someone understood that expensive-looking outdoor spaces aren't about size or budget, they're about intention. I've spent over a decade helping homeowners transform ordinary yards into spaces that look like they cost 3 times what they actually did, and the small features that create that effect. They're almost never what people think to invest in first. Most people find out about them after they've already spent money on the wrong things. Today, I'm counting down the 10 small garden features that make your home look genuinely expensive. Some of these cost almost nothing. All of them change how people perceive your entire property the moment they walk through the gate. You'll want to stay for number 1 because it's the single detail that separates a yard that looks designed from one that looks like it just happened. Number 10. Matching planters in odd numbers. Here's what most homeowners do. They buy 3 or 4 large planters in different styles, different colors, different heights, and scatter them around the entrance. The result looks collected, not designed. It looks like they were purchased at different times from different places, which they probably were. This is the yard equivalent of mixing patterns and calling it eclectic. Expensive gardens do the opposite. They use matching sets in odd numbers, 3 identical tall planters flanking a doorway, 5 matching containers graduating in size along a pathway, 7 uniform pots arranged in a staggered line on a deck. The reason this works comes down to psychology. Our brains read repetition as intention. When something repeats, we assume it was planned. When things are random, we assume it was accidental or budget-conscious. The expensive look happens the moment you commit to a visual system instead of a collection. The planters themselves don't need to be expensive. Fiberglass that mimics stone looks identical to the real thing at 1/10 of the cost and weighs almost nothing. Concrete in a clean matte finish reads as high-end. Even basic terracotta in the same color and size, lined up intentionally, transforms an entrance. The fix is straightforward. Choose 1 planter style, buy 3, 5, or 7 of them depending on your space. Fill them with the same plant or a coordinated mix, arrange them with deliberate spacing rather than random placement. This single decision makes every entrance look professionally designed. It costs less than 1 expensive pot but creates more visual impact than almost anything else you can do. Number 9. Specimen plants in dedicated beds. Most people plant for volume. They throw a bunch of different plants into a bed, hoping something interesting happens. The result is visual noise. An expensive garden does the opposite. It creates dedicated focal points with single specimens or small coordinated groups. A Japanese maple, planted as a solo feature in a bed of low-growing ground cover. A sculptural evergreen shrub underplanted with shade-tolerant grasses. One stunning ornamental tree surrounded by simple mulch and low lighting. The principle here is called negative space or white space in design. It's the emptiness that makes the object stand out. Galleries don't hang paintings next to 20 other paintings. They isolate them. They give them room to breathe. Your garden works the same way. A dedicated bed for a specimen plant costs nothing extra. You're using less plant material, not more, but you're arranging what you do use with intention. The specimen plant becomes the story instead of 1 line in a paragraph. The impact on curb appeal is massive because people actually notice what they're looking at instead of their eye bouncing around trying to find a focal point. The fix is identifying 1 or 2 locations where you want visual emphasis. A corner, an entry, a turn in the pathway, then choose a single plant with interesting form, color, or seasonal interest. Plant it in a contained bed with simple underplanting. Light it subtly at night. This approach costs less than stuffing a bed with a dozen different plants but reads as far more expensive and intentional. Number 8. Mixed material hardscaping with clear hierarchy. Cheap-looking gardens use 1 material everywhere. All concrete, all mulch, all gravel. Expensive-looking gardens layer materials with clear intention. A gravel pathway with steel edging and stone pavers at intersections. A concrete patio with porcelain tile insets. A mulched bed with a stone border and scattered slate steppers. The key word is hierarchy. You have a primary material that dominates, secondary materials that accent, and tertiary materials that create transition. Primary material covers most of the area and sets the base palette. Secondary materials appear less frequently but create visual interest and define spaces. Tertiary materials are almost subtle, just enough to make transitions feel intentional rather than accidental. Most homeowners get this backward. They use their most expensive material sparingly and cover everything else with budget options. Expensive design reverses this. Use high-quality primary material intelligently and invest in small amounts of premium accents. A large area of basic concrete with strategic insets of natural stone looks more expensive than an entire patio of mid-range paving. The material contrast creates sophistication. The fix is mapping out your hardscape and deciding what material tells the main story. Everything else should support that story, not compete with it. You need maybe 20 to 30% secondary material to create visual impact. The rest can be practical and functional. That ratio is what makes it look designed instead of just pieced together. Number 7. Layered planting with clear sight lines. This is where most residential gardens fail. People plant in a solid wall, shrubs in front, taller shrubs behind, trees in back. It creates what I call the hedge effect. It looks like a fortress or a screen. Expensive gardens create layers that you can actually see through. Front layer might be low ground cover or small shrubs, 1 to 2 feet tall. Middle layer is medium shrubs or small ornamental trees, 4 to 8 feet tall. Back layer is canopy trees or tall shrubs, 15 to 25 feet tall. But here's the critical detail most people miss: you need sight lines. You need to be able to see through the layers. Not a solid wall, but glimpses. You see the ground cover, through that you see the middle layer. And through that you see the backdrop. This creates depth. It creates mystery. It makes a small garden feel larger because you can't see everything at once. It also makes the garden more usable because you can actually move through it and see where you're going. The fix is thinning your middle layer, remove some of the solid screening. Plants. Keep the architectural pieces but open up sight lines. Space plants wider than you think looks right, then let them grow to fill in gradually. A garden that's too dense reads as young or poorly maintained. A garden with open sight lines reads as mature and intentional, even if it's newly planted. Number 6. Intentional asymmetry and negative space. This is the detail that separates good gardens from great ones. Most homeowners assume expensive gardens are symmetrical, formal, balanced, perfectly even. Some are, but the ones that actually photograph best and feel most sophisticated usually aren't. They use asymmetrical balance, one large tree on one side of a yard, balanced by a cluster of smaller shrubs on the other, an open lawn on one side, dense planting on the other, a tall feature on the left, a low feature on the right. This creates visual tension and interest. It feels more natural and less like a theme park. The other element is negative space. The emptiness matters as much as the planted areas. Too many people try to fill every inch. Expensive gardens are intentional about what they leave empty. An open lawn with one feature, a gravel area with a single stone, a bed of mulch with scattered plants spaced generously. The empty space is where your eye rests. It's what makes the planted areas stand out. The fix is stepping back and looking at your overall layout. Are you trying to fill every inch? Stop, leave space. Move your shrubs further apart than they need to be to fill in later. Plant asymmetrically, create areas of calm visual rest. The garden becomes more sophisticated when you stop trying to use every square foot. Number 5. Subtle uplighting on key features. This is where most homeowners completely miss the mark on evening ambience. They either light nothing, or they light everything with bright overhead lights that look like a parking lot. Expensive gardens use selective, subtle uplighting on specific features. An uplight at the base of a textured tree creates shadow and depth. An uplight on a sculpture or water feature makes it glow. Path lights along edges define movement without harsh illumination. String lights overhead in a canopy create warmth. The magic happens because most people never see it during the day. Your yard looks fine in daylight, but at night, with intentional lighting, it transforms. It creates atmosphere. It extends how long people actually want to be outside. Guests notice. They comment on it. It becomes part of the home's identity, the technical detail that matters is warm color temperature. Every bulb should be 2700 Kelvin or warmer. Mixing warm and cool light sources looks confused. Warm light throughout looks intentional and expensive. The other detail is subtlety. Lights should suggest things, not announce them. You shouldn't see the fixture itself, just the effect it creates. A light source you can look directly at is too bright. A light source hidden behind a plant that illuminates the plant is perfect. The fix is installing a low-voltage system with a timer. Most modern systems are modular and don't require trenching or an electrician. Add it incrementally. Start with a few key features. You'll immediately see the impact. then add more as you identify what actually needs emphasis. This single upgrade makes your garden look designed and expensive every single evening. Number 4. Consistent edge definition throughout. Watch an expensive garden and an ordinary garden side by side. The expensive one has crisp, clean edges everywhere, between lawn and beds, between patio and planting, along pathways, around trees. Edges are clean and consistent. The ordinary garden has blurry transitions, grass creeping into beds, planting spilling onto paving, mulch spreading into the lawn. It looks neglected, even if it's well maintained. The psychology here is simple. Clean edges signal control and intention. Blurry edges signal neglect and chaos. The expensive garden isn't necessarily using expensive materials for edging. It's using consistent, well-defined edges, whatever material that is. A simple spade-cut trench between lawn and bed looks more expensive than a plastic border that's deteriorating. Steel edging flush with soil looks more intentional than decorative brick borders that have heaved up. The fix is identifying your edging strategy and committing to it. Spade-cut trenches require annual maintenance but are free and look great. Steel or aluminum edging costs more initially but lasts decades and requires almost no maintenance. Whatever you choose, keep it consistent throughout the garden. The visual coherence created by consistent edging makes the entire space read as more sophisticated and carefully designed. This is an example of a small detail that creates disproportionate impact. Most people walk into a garden they perceive as expensive and can't identify exactly why. Often it's because every edge is crisp and clean and intentional. Number 3. Coordinated plant spacing and repetition. Most amateur gardens have plants that look randomly placed. This shrub here, that shrub there, no apparent system. Expensive gardens use repetition and spacing as a design tool. The same plant repeated at regular intervals creates rhythm. Understanding plant spacing at maturity creates sophistication. Here's what most people don't realize. A plant that looks too small when you first plant it, spaced further apart than feels comfortable, will look perfectly designed in 3 to 5 years. A plant that looks dense and full right after planting will look crowded and neglected in 5 years as things mature. Expensive gardens are designed for the future, not for the present. The spacing looks wrong for the first few years. By year 5, it looks perfect. The repetition principle means using the same plant multiple times rather than one of each plant. 3 of the same shrubs scattered in a bed creates more visual impact than 3 different shrubs. 5 of the same ground cover repeated creates rhythm. This doesn't mean monotony. You can repeat plants while varying heights, colors, or forms, but the repetition itself creates sophistication. The fix is identifying key plant species you love and using them in groups of 3, 5, or 7. Space them for mature size, not current size. This requires patience and faith that your design will look right eventually. But that faith is what separates homeowners who create expensive-looking gardens from those who don't. Number 2. Water features that actually work. Most homeowners skip water features entirely because they assume they're complicated and high maintenance. The ones who do install them often choose options that create more problems than beauty. A traditional pond that turns green with algae within weeks. A fountain with inadequate water flow that just looks sad. A water feature placed in the wrong location that never gets enjoyed. Here's what actually works. A pondless recirculating feature with proper pump sizing and placement. Water flows over a surface, usually stacked stone or slate, and disappears into a buried reservoir. A submersible pump recirculates the water continuously. There's no standing water, so no algae, no mosquitoes, no safety concerns. The sound is identical to a traditional water feature, often better. The maintenance is almost nothing. An undersized pump is the killer mistake. A weak trickle doesn't create the sound and visual impact you want. An oversized pump costs only slightly more, but creates a dramatic difference. Placement matters. A feature visible from inside the house, in a spot where you actually sit, gets used and enjoyed. A feature hidden around a corner rarely gets experienced. The fix is committing to a pondless system with an oversized pump and intentional placement. This single feature makes your garden feel like somewhere worth spending time. Guests comment on it. You actually use your outdoor space more because of it. It's one of the highest return investments for the relatively modest cost involved. Number 1. A primary seating area positioned in the sightline of your house. Here's the feature that separates gardens people actually use from gardens that look beautiful but stay empty. Most people place their seating area based on logistics. It's where there's space. It's where the door leads. It's where the sun is. Then they Wonder why they never sit there. Expensive-looking gardens that actually get used have their primary seating area positioned where you can see it from inside your house, from the kitchen window, from the main living room window, from wherever you spend most of your time indoors. Here's why this matters. People don't use outdoor spaces they can't see. If your seating area is invisible from inside, it becomes psychologically remote. You don't think to go outside, you don't glance out and see the sunset and grab a drink. The space sits empty except for deliberate occasions, but a seating area you can see while making dinner or working. You use it constantly. You wander out for 15 minutes. You notice how the light hits in the evening. The space becomes integrated into how you live. This isn't about luxury or expense, it's about psychology and lifestyle integration. The secondary benefit is visual. A well-furnished seating area visible from inside becomes a focal point of your garden composition. It anchors the space. It tells the story of the garden. It makes the entire property feel more intentional because there's clearly a place where someone is meant to be, meant to pause, meant to enjoy. The fix is radical honesty about where you actually sit. Don't design for where you think you should sit. Design for where you actually go. If that's not near your house, a short connecting path changes everything. The garden you can see is the garden you use. The garden you use is the garden that looks expensive and feels like it's worth investing in, because you're investing time in it, and that time is what creates the lived-in sophistication that expensive gardens have. Look, if you've got none of these features yet, that's actually good news. Every single one is a decision you can make before you commit money to something that doesn't actually serve your space or your lifestyle. The gardens that look the most expensive aren't complicated, they're intentional. They use small, smart details instead of big, expensive installations. They're designed around how people actually live and move through space, not around what looks good on a mood board. Which one of these are you implementing first? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one and I genuinely want to know what you're going to tackle. If this helped you think differently about your garden, hit like and subscribe. There's a lot more of this coming: garden design, landscape strategy, outdoor living, all of it. I'll see you in the next one.